Hello students, welcome to EduRev. Have you ever wondered how a single region can reshape global diplomacy and domestic choices alike? In the next few minutes, you will get a clear, exam-focused tour of 5 current issues: the Israel-Palestine question and the proposed peace board, Greenland and great power politics, ecological risks in the Himalayas, the BRICS summit opportunity, and India's new National Legislative Index. Let's begin with the Israel-Palestine story and why it matters for India and world order. Historically, the conflict traces back to the aftermath of World War I and the changing mandate arrangements around 1918. Jewish communities, shaped by long-term persecution, pressed for a homeland after the wars, and British promises set the stage for future claims. After World War II, the territory was partitioned into a Jewish state, Israel, and an Arab-majority region referred to as Palestine, a division that sparked immediate resistance and war. Today, Palestinian presence is concentrated in the West Bank and Gaza. And it is important to note that the West Bank does not border the Mediterranean Sea. In October 2023, Hamas launched a deadly attack from Gaza, and Israel responded with a larger military campaign, creating a severe humanitarian crisis and renewed international debate. In response, two broad formulas were proposed. One calls for Israel's forces to withdraw and for Hamas to surrender with international forces deployed to secure peace. The other proposal envisions an international board of peace chaired by former US President Trump, intended to oversee reconstruction and governance in Gaza. India received a special invitation to this proposed board alongside Pakistan and other countries, which makes the decision highly sensitive. India has several reasons to hesitate, starting with Pakistan's inclusion and the concern that the Kashmir issue could be raised in a forum addressing Gaza. India also officially supports a two-state solution, and there are worries that new governance arrangements for Gaza could weaken Palestinian statehood claims. Relations with the US under the board's chairperson are another factor, since strategic ties and the unpredictability of leadership behavior affect diplomatic calculations. Finally, skipping the platform could raise uncomfortable questions about India's global leadership credentials. So the choice is not purely bilateral, but reputational too. For quick prelims recall, the proposed peace board chairperson is Trump, and understand the two-state solution as independent Israel and Palestine states living side by side. Also remember the permanent members of the UN Security Council: Russia, China, the United States, France, and Britain, and that a recent Gaza peace proposal passed the UNSC with Russia and China abstaining. Think of a mains response in terms of India's balancing act: promoting peace, protecting strategic interests, and preserving normative positions on bilateral issues. Turning not to Greenland. Remember, it is part of the Kingdom of Denmark and is the world's largest island, largely covered by ice. There have been public claims from the United States about acquiring Greenland, with explicit statements that force would not be used but purchase was desired. European capitals reacted strongly, and the rhetoric included threats of tariffs, initially 10% and potentially 25% if opposition continued. Beyond rhetoric is the strategic calculus. Greenland lies in the Arctic corridor, and its control matters to deter influence from Russia and China and to access critical mineral resources. There was also talk of developing a Golden Dome missile defense system incorporating space-based layers, a concept that links Arctic positioning to broader defense planning. For a short map exercise, check where the Davis Strait lies and why these Arctic waterways matter strategically. Now let's focus on the ecologically vulnerable Himalayas and why road and development projects matter for environmental security. Construction in Uttarakhand and similar Himalayan states often requires cutting slopes, felling trees, and blasting, actions that disturb fragile geology. The region is seismically active, and such interventions raise the likelihood of earthquakes triggering avalanches and landslides. Cutting deodar and other native species is not merely about losing trees. Root networks stabilize slopes, and their removal amplifies slope failure risk. Forests also regulate river water quality, local microclimates, and oxygenation. So deforestation has cascading ecological impacts downstream. A worrying practice is project fragmentation to evade environmental impact assessment requirements. For example, splitting a long corridor into smaller segments to avoid clearance thresholds. Such shortcuts have consequences. Widening a 700-kilometer road corridor has been linked to the creation of some 800 active landslide zones in observed cases. An important fact for prelims is the National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem, approved in 2014 under India's National Action Plan on Climate Change. For mains, structure your answer around integrated policy tools, rigorous EIA, community participation, disaster risk maps, and green engineering standards. At the BRICS India Summit, India has an opening to underscore multipolarity and to push issues sidelined in many Western forums. Climate action, green energy transitions, food security, and mobilizing climate finance are concrete agendas India can champion within BRICS to build Southern cooperation. Framing these goals around resilience and equitable finance will align India's leadership with global needs and domestic developmental priorities. Finally, domestically, India is piloting a national legislative index to address concerns about parliamentary productivity and democratic quality. Om Birla proposed this index to measure performance on indicators like House time utilization, committee functioning, legislative outcomes, and people-centric accountability. The aim is to reduce disruptions and improve the substantive quality of lawmaking and oversight, a governance reform with direct relevance to administrative efficiency and public trust. So what is the analytical takeaway for UPSC candidates? When faced with diplomatic platforms like a peace board, India must weigh strategic autonomy, normative commitments such as the two-state principle, humanitarian obligations, and domestic sensitivities concurrently. On Arctic and mineral diplomacy, watch how resource access, alliance politics, and climate imperatives intersect and shape policy choices. For environmental governance in the Himalayas, policy answers must integrate scientific risk assessment, transparent impact appraisal, and community resilience measures. At multilateral forums like BRICS, converting rhetorical leadership into climate finance and food security partnerships will test India's diplomatic capacity. Domestically, strengthening legislative performance through measurable indices can improve policy outcomes and democratic accountability. To recap briefly, we covered the Israel-Palestine origins and the proposed peace board dilemma for India, Greenland's strategic stakes, Himalayan ecological vulnerabilities, BRICS leadership opportunities, and the National Legislative Index reform. For prelims, keep the factual anchors dates, mission names, and the UNSC membership list clear in your memory. For mains, practice structuring answers around stakes, policy options, and recommended frameworks that balance principle, pragmatism, and implementation detail. Thank you for listening with attention and calm. And remember, steady reasoning serves you better than hurried memorization. If you want more practice questions, map exercises, and model answers tailored to UPSC Prelims and Mains, explore EduRev's curated materials and quizzes. Stay curious, keep refining your arguments, and we'll meet again for the next topic. Good luck and study well.